lecture series Programming in C. In this session, we will be learning about strings. We will be focusing on learning the strings, how it is handled in C in this module. So, this module covers the definition and examples of C string declaration and initialization of strings, and we will be looking about the examples of string declaration and initialization. Now, already we have learnt about the arrays. We have learnt that array is a data type which can have collection of data of same type stored in a contiguous way. So, we have learnt on handling the integer array, float type array and character type array. So, the character type array is actually named as strings. So, we can say that a string is an array of characters. Individual characters are stored in memory as ASCII codes. So, here we can see in the example that there is a character array which holds 5 characters. So, we can see the characters H, E, L, L, O stored in 5 contiguous locations. But there is a small thing to be noted is that there is a character at the end of the string called a null character. Actually, this null character significance is that it indicates the termination of the string, because since the strings are being handled as array of characters, we can't keep the string to be continuous. We will not be able to identify at what particular point the string is getting completed, the string is terminated. So, in order to declare that the string is terminated, C uses a special character called null character, which is actually the notation followed is \0. So, how do we declare string variables? We know that it is character array. So, the way that the character array is declared, the string declaration goes with. So, we can see here that the data type should be named as char, and this is going to be the user defined name, and this is what is the size of the array. So, if we see an example, so we can declare that char A is the name of the string of 10, which means that I can store 10 elements in this array starting from 0 to 9. How many characters we can store in this array will be less 1 than the final element, because the final element has to be allocated for the null character representation. So, we will be able to store the character array from 0 to 8 locations, which means that we can store 9 characters if we are declaring the character array size to be 10. If it is declared to be 10, we will be able to store 9 characters. It means that if it is going to be n number of characters, then we can at the maximum store n minus 1 characters in a string array, in a character array. Fine. So, here size determines the number of characters in the string, including the null character. So, while creating the array, while storing the elements into array, we must be aware that null character will have to be stored at the end of the string. What if the null character is not stored by the user? The compiler automatically will fill the last character to be a null character, even though if it is having some value, the value will be erased. The final value will be erased and it will be replaced with the null character, right. Yeah. We will take one example here. So, the character array is defined with 8 elements, and every character is enclosed with a single quote and it can be assigned with values like this. It is assigned with the values while declaring the character array. So, we can say this as a character array initialization. We are initializing the values to the character array at the time of declaration. Henceforth, we can say that the initialization of the character array goes with this way, storing each element enclosed within single quotes, right. So, if it is the case, C of 0 will be assigned with the character D, the first location. C of 1 will be assigned with the character E. It means that this will be the index 0, this will be the index 1, this will be the index 2, and it goes on in an array. So, since it occupies 7 characters can be occupied in this array, we can see that the index of the characters would be assigned this way. And here we can see that the last character is assigned with the value null character. Null terminated character strings are also called strings. Strings can be initialized in alternative way. There is one more way of initializing the values to the strings. Instead of storing individual character enclosed within single quotes, we can create a string enclosed within double quotes and it can be assigned altogether as a string inclusive of the white space characters. Here we can see the string stored with a set of characters enclosed within double quotes. So, this also is a way that the strings can be initialized with values. Note that also for individual characters C uses single quotes, whereas for string it uses double quotes. Whatever be the way that the strings are initialized, C will automatically be storing the null character as the end of the character. Also here we can see some more examples of declaring the strings with various sizes. So, this first string is with the name with 30 characters, city with 15 characters, DOB, that is date of birth, with 11 characters. So, here we can see the way that the values can be initialized for these strings can be this way: city of 15 equal to Calcutta, which can be enclosed within double quotes. Also, this can be declared in this way, that giving individual characters enclosed within single quotes. We can also store the date of birth as a date enclosed within double quotes. So, this way we can even store a date as a string in C language. So, this will help us process with the dates. Yeah. Now, we have learnt that strings are the list of characters stored in the form of an array. Then, in case if we want to store more than one string, if we want to handle list of strings, how could it be done? How can we create or declare the list of strings? How could it be handled in C language? So, that we will see. We have already learnt that one dimensional array will help us store a single list, and two dimensional array will help us store a tabular format having rows and column values, and it can store a list of n number of list. So, here we are learning that strings are the list of character arrays. So, henceforth we can go for declaring it as a two dimensional array. So, there is an example given here. The name is a array declared with 2 dimensions with 6 and 10. It means that it can have 6 rows and 10 columns. 6 rows can store 6 strings. Each string can have at the maximum of 10 characters. So, we can make it as a tabular format having rows and columns with 6 strings and each string can store maximum 9 characters. Even though the size is 10, the final last character will be allocated for null character. So, it can store at the maximum of 9 characters. So, we can see the table, it carries 6 strings. Say for instance, the first string is Mr. Bean. So, that would be stored in the first row, that would be stored in the first row with each character assigned in each location. So, M R dot, there is a space, then B E A N. So, Mr. Bean will be stored as a character array in the first row. Then the second name is Mr. Bush. So, we can make it as a second row storage. The first row we can see a null character, it means the string is ending up with that character. And the third string is Nicole. Nicole is stored without any space, again ending with the null character. The fourth row Kidman is stored again with no space in between, with ending up with a null character. Next one will be Arnold string, which is again ended with a null character. Then the last string we can see the sixth string is enclosed in the last row, that is with the index 5, and it is ended up with the null character. So, this is how the list of strings are handled by C language in the form of a 2-dimensional array. So, in case if I want to represent a single character out of all the strings, out of all the list. So, what we can do? We can use 2 index references, 2 subscripts, one for the row index, the other for the column index. So, the row index, supposing if I want to get the result of this character M. So, it happens to be in the row with index value 3. So, index value of the row, it is 3. What about the column index? It is also 3. Column index, it is also 3. So, what we can do? We can make the array representation to be name of 3 index value, row index value and column index value. So, name of 3 row index, 3 column index will represent the character M. So, similarly, if we see this E, if we want to represent this E, the row index value is 2 and the column index value is 5. So, I can make the notation as name of 2, column index is 5, right. So, this is the way that the strings can be handled as a list using an array of 2-dimensional in size, which will have rows and columns. Okay. Hope you would have understood the way that the 2-dimensional array helps us to create the list of strings, right. Now, how do we calculate the size of a string? Generally, if it is a single dimensional array, then immediately you can say that the size of the array is going to be the size of the string, right. If it is going to be a 2-dimensional array, we will be having 2 dimensions, that is number of strings and how many number of characters in each string. So, we have to calculate the size of the array in that case as first index into second index. Say for instance, for the previous example, we have assumed the array to be of size name of 6 and 10 as the row and column indexes. So, here we can just multiply the row index and the column index to arrive at the size of the array. So, it is 6 into 10 will be 60. So, we will be getting the size of the array to be 60. Instead, we can simply say that x into y will give us a result of the size of the string, right. So, we can see an example that how the array is stored in memory after reading 3 strings in the array. So, let us take an example. So, here we can see that there are 3 strings of each having 3 characters. So, this is the way the arrays would be stored in the memory. If I rerun the program by just changing the value of u to my MYOU will have to be replaced by 2 characters having M and Y as a character or the string, right. So, how it is now turned up? We can see the way it is stored. So, the first string is with the value YOU, the second string it continues with the value MY, and we can see that there is one more string assigned with value LUY, right. So, this illustrates the content actually be how it can be handled in the memory. Now, coming to string constant. In case if I want to store the constant value as we have learnt in integer and floating point constants, in strings also if we want to have a constant value, that could not be done using just the char as the data type. We may have to introduce a pointer to assign the base address of the string and then go ahead with assigning the constant value, right. So, this is a way we can do. We have to declare a character type pointer and we can have the string enclosed within double quotes. We have to make the pointer to be assigned with the base address of this array. So, whatever be the base address, it will be assigned to the pointer, and from there onwards we will be able to access the string by the pointer value by incrementing or doing any operations associated with the pointer value. So, we can see an example here. We are trying to print the value starting from P. So, P is the base address. So, starting from P, whatever be the string which is available until the null character would be the output for the first %s. Say for example, this %s will have to be replaced with the value of P. So, here we can see whatever be the 3 character values, it is now displayed, right. P plus 1, if I increment the base address from pointing to this location, now it is moved to this location. Now, P has got incremented by 1. So, the location has got changed. Now, we have only left over with 2 characters to be displayed. So, that could be displayed this way, right. One important thing that is to be noted in this case is that while handling any pointers, we have used the notation ampersand to denote the address value, and we might have used the asterisk symbol to denote the value which is stored in that particular location. But here, since we are using %s, we need not give any of the pointer operators. If we just give the pointer value, automatically the %s control string will pick the value from that particular address, and if we are operating any pointer operation like P plus 1 or P plus n, accordingly the pointer value will get incremented or decremented, whatever it so, then it picks up the address from that particular location. So, again for that also we need not use any of the pointer symbols. Now, we will learn in this session that how a string can be printed. We have learnt what is a string, we have learnt how to create a string using declaration, we have initialized the values onto a string, and we will now learn how to print the string. So, while printing the string, just be storing the string in a character type array. So, here we can see that character type array with 10 elements, we are declaring the array with 10 elements, but here we are only storing 8 characters. So, since we are able to store even more 2 characters, in the character array, but we are limiting it to 8 characters. So, if it is so, we are now want to print only 8 characters. So, you can make a for loop in such a way that what is the value that we are stored or how many number of locations we have used for storing the string, that should be mentioned as a control variable in the loop structure. So, for I equal to 0, I less than 8, then I plus plus, I am just using the control string percentage %C to print the string value, and here we are supposed to use the array. So, every time when the I value keeps incremented, automatically it is able to retrieve the particular character corresponding to that particular index. Say for instance, initially C of I would be pointing to C of 0, because I value is initially 0. So, if it is C of 0 will be the character C. So, that would be given as the output. Then as the iteration moves on, the value of I gets incremented by 1 on every iteration. So, on every iteration this is incremented to C of 1, C of 2, C of 3, and it goes on up to C of 7, right. So, C of 0, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, 0 to 7, 8 characters. It is now iterated through a for loop, and every time we are getting the character retrieved from the memory, and it is now displayed as a output together as a string. Okay. For executing this way, I need to know two things. First thing will be the length of the string. I should know how many characters are going to be there in the string, only then I can fix up the control variable here. And second thing is, every time when the loop is executed, it retrieves character by character to print the string as a whole. Now, there is another way to print the string instead. We need not know the length of the string, we can just make use of percentage %s. Percentage %s, what it will do? It will move to the base address of the string by mentioning the name of the array here. If you mention the name of the array as C, it moves to the first location or the base address of that array, and then from there onwards percentage %s control string will automatically retrieve the characters until it encounters the null character. So, it is able to now read the string as a whole without having the looping structure. Now, let us have a quick analysis on character versus strings. So, what if you are there are two methods we have learned: storing the character array and retrieving each character individually using a for loop, and the other way is to represent as a complete string, and we will be able to use the percentage %s to retrieve and work with a complete string. So, what is the difference and how we are supposed to go with? Do not confuse strings with individual characters, because always individual characters will be enclosed within single quotes, and if it is a string, it has to be enclosed with the double quotes, right. So, for instance, if we are initializing a character array with array of characters, we will be initializing individual character enclosed with single quote, right. So, this is the way we have handled, and if it is going to be a string, if you want to handle it as a string, it is enough that if you enclose the complete string within double quotes. So, this is easier to use compared to the way that each character has to be handled separately, right. We are trying to store this array in memory, then we should know how in the memory handles the C array with the in the form of characters. So, that we will learn. Yes. So, as we have already learned, C is the name of the array. So, associated with the name of the array, the base address of the array would be stored. So, the base address will be pointing to the first character which is stored in the character type array. So, C points to the character C, which is the first location of the array, which is represented by the index C of 0. Then it goes with the incrementing the address by 1 and it stores the value in C of 1, then C of 2, C of 3, C of 4. Right. So, up to C of 6 the values of the characters has been stored, and we can see that the last character is terminated with a null character, which is actually stored in the location C of 7. Right. Actually, the array was declared with size to be 10. The array was declared with size to be 10, but then we are using only 8 characters. So, here we can see that we are using only 8 characters. The rest of the 2 characters will be left undeclared or unused. So, here we can see that the array locations are stored with the corresponding characters with starting from index 0. So, here we can see that C of 0, C of 1, C of 2, C of 3, C of 4, 5 and 6. So, 7 locations are used for the characters to store, and we can see that the last element is a null character which is represented using the location C of 7. So, totally 8 elements are stored or 8 characters are stored in the array with the array size to be of 10. So, the last 2 elements here we can see are left out to be unused characters, unused locations. Right. So, assume an example that here also we will go with the same example of having the array to be of size 10. Compute is the word which is a string which is stored in that array, and here we can see 2 versions of printing the array, percentage s to be with the C, and in the 8th location we are trying to store a value A, and again we are trying to print the value C. So, what would be the output in this case? We will see with an example figure. Yeah. So, here you can make out that the string compute is stored on the 7 locations and 8th location is with the null character, but then null character denotes the string termination. So, even though if you are trying to store an element in the location C of 8 to be with the character A, still it is not been accessed by the printf statement after storing the value A. The reason behind this is the compiler will assume that if there is a null character, it is the end of the string. So, from the beginning or from the starting base address, it will be able to read all the strings from here till here, but when it encounters a null character, it will stop the retrieving process, it will stop the print process, it will ignore the values after the null character. So, this is how C handles the strings in a beautiful way, right. So, prints until null character is reached, even though there are some other characters after null character. So, here you can see an example. The character array is created with 7 characters and is assigned with 7 characters as a string. But while printing the elements, we can see that some other ASCII values are also printed along with it, in case if the string is not terminated with the null character. So, null character plays a vital role in creating the string, and it is a one which delimits and represents that it is end of the string. So, summarizing this session, we have learnt on the way that how strings can be handled by the C programs and how C compiler is able to store and retrieve the string values in the form of a character array. Also, we have learnt the declaration of strings, how we can declare the strings using the character array method and in the form of a string declaration method. And how do we initialize strings? We have seen two ways to initialize. One will be storing it as individual single characters enclosed within single quotes. The other way to store the string is to enclose it with the double character and storing or putting it as a complete string. So, these two initialization methods we have seen. Also, we have seen some examples on how strings are handled with the memory part in C compiler. Thank you.